Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and we just finished the quarterfinals, so now is a good time to go through what we've seen so far. I think I did a video similar to this maybe a week ago, but I was thinking today about regional strength and how we think of these different teams, so I just wanted to go through like kind of a quick recap of a lot of these teams. So we'll start again in the play-in stage, and we'll just go through. So Team Liquid. So before Worlds started, Team Liquid was thought of as an okay team that really didn't have an incredible chance to get out of the play-in stage. They were definitely one of the favorites to get out, but they weren't like a lock. Like people were saying, Mad Lions was a lock. LGD was a lock. Unicorns of Love were supposed to be very good because of their domestic strength. But I think some people liked Supermassive, but those were really the main teams that everybody assumed would get out. So Team Liquid, in North America, they're thought of as one of the better teams, but obviously North America is thought of as one of the worst regions, the worst major region, which ended up coming to fruition at Worlds. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I'm not going to get into that in this video, but Team Liquid, definitely one of the 3 or 4 best teams in North America. But what is that really saying? That's kind of the question. So we have Impact. Impact is still a serviceable player, is not really a difference maker against the top level teams. Some people want to say like, oh, Impact still plays really well, but he plays really well, quote unquote really well, against North American players in North America, or against Legacy, against Supermassive, against INTZ, against Mad Lions. These aren't the top teams from around the world. And if you're not comparing yourself to the top teams in the world, then what are your goals? What are your ambitions? If you're not trying to be the best team that you can be, and you're not trying to be the best team in the world, then what are you trying to do? It's just, are you collecting paychecks? What's going on? It's something that every team really needs to ask themselves. And if a team's answer is not to be a world champion or not be the best team in the world, then I think that team is fundamentally flawed. Legacy Esports, I didn't have much information on them going into this, going into play-ins. Now their entire league is dissolving, so a lot of Oceanic players are going to go to North America. I think it's a huge mistake. The Oceanic players are extremely overrated. We have a very small sample size of some of their better players, and to think that they're going to come to North America and like turn North America into a good region is just absolutely false. The flaws of Oceania, the Oceanic region, and the flaws of North America cannot help one another. Increasing your player pool with like flooding it with subpar talent from North America and Oceania it's not going to make you compete with the best teams in the world. That's just not how it works. If you have 5 players in the entire region that are very good and they all manage to be on the same team, then we have a chance. If that team also has very good macro and pick ban and all that, then they have a chance. But the chances of that happening in North America seems very low because organizationally, I think teams just don't really understand the game the way that they should. They don't have a foundation. And I don't really want to get too deep into this because it's a lot of it's opinion based, but isn't everything. So next up we have Supermassive from Turkey. They had a lot of good players. Kakao, the world famous Kakao. And I think Armut is on Supermassive, right? And he's going to Mad Lions, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, basically I don't have a lot of information about Supermassive. I didn't have many priors on them going into the tournament. Mad Lions, everybody just assumed that Mad Lions would be the best. I didn't think they were really the best team in play-ins going into it. I gave that to LGD, and even though LGD stumbled, I think that they still showed that they were probably the best team from play-ins. So Mad Lions, they're getting rid of Arome, which I think is smart. They're getting rid of Shadow, which I think is a big mistake. El Yoya is a Spanish jungler, good player, has played well at the European Masters a few times. But I think giving up on Shadow at this point is pretty insane, considering at different points during spring and summer, Shadow was considered one of the best carry junglers in the league, and this is a problem because it's very nearsighted. So in this meta, since patch 10.7, we have Hecarim. Well, not really. Hecarim came in later, but Graves, Nidalee, Kindred, Hecarim, Lilia are really the main junglers, and like Lee Sin is also on the edges of that because you can always play Lee Sin. But Elyoya has been very good at this on this patch. So if this patch goes away, what are they really getting with Elyoya? So I think Elyoya is definitely one of the primary candidates to have a huge underperforming season if they manage to become the top jungler for Mad Lions. And it could also be the case where Mad Lions plays well with Elyoya being on a different type of jungler, but that's not the play style that justified bringing in Elyoya. So it may eventually look like the correct decision, even if the process to get there was bad. INTZ from Brazil. INTZ wasn't even the best team from Brazil, so it's kind of unfortunate that this is what happened. Like, I think stylistically, you really needed one of the other teams for them to have a chance to do anything at the play-in stage. In terms of the Worlds format, I think there are much better ways to set it up. Like, I don't want to see a double round robin of a bunch of bad teams. I'd rather see like a March Madness bracket getting you to like 8 teams or 4 teams, and then do a double round robin where you have a lot of good teams that have already played very well at Worlds. I think that'd be really cool to watch. Next up, Psg Talon. Again, I didn't have a lot of priors going into this with Psg Talon, but I assumed that they'd be okay. Because I liked their champion pools. Then they had all the substitute players, which was very interesting because Kong Yu and I forget the mid laner's name. They still played really well. They got a lot of the champions that were their power picks, so they ended up making it out. That was interesting to watch. Unicorns of Love was very overrated because of their domestic success. It ended up being fine in the play-in stage, but then when they got the groups, they got destroyed. LGD started off really poorly, but turned it on and won like 8 games in a row in the play-in stage. V3 from Japan. Japan's not a very good region, similar to like Brazil, North America, Turkey. Like, you just don't expect those teams to go very far in these kinds of tournaments. Now, go to the group stage. Suning, a team that I've been extremely high on all year. Before the summer split even started, I said that I think Suning has a chance to make some noise in the Chinese league, and that necessarily means that they could also compete on a world level because LPL is the best league in the world. G2, and this is really the main reason why I wanted to make this video. If you go back and watch my videos from the beginning of the summer, middle of the summer, when G2 was really struggling, and we did the power ranking videos and all these videos about how G2 is still the best team in Europe, even though they're not performing well. It speaks to the form is temporary, class is permanent, and it's funny because people like Quickshot love to say that a team outclassed the other team on a specific day, but he doesn't seem to understand what that actually implies. It means that the team with class is the team that you expect to be better over the long term, and form is temporary, meaning like maybe they're just having a good split. And I think that he said it yesterday about Top Esports and Fnatic, and he said Fnatic outclassed Top Esports in a game. And I'm like, do you know what you're talking about? Like, do you know what word you just said? Because that's suggesting that Fnatic is better long term than Top Esports, which is hilarious. And I know he didn't mean it like that. And then next up, Team Liquid. Team Liquid did a pretty good job in the group stage, considering what their expectations should have been going into this. And that's really the most difficult thing to deal with for someone like myself who pays a lot of attention to this and tries to give real opinions for an extended period of time, because Team Liquid going into this should not have been thought of as a team with a realistic chance to get out of the group stage, especially when you take into consideration Suning and G2 are both in their group. So thinking to yourself, like, Team Liquid needs to get out of groups for it to be a success, that's an unrealistic expectation. How often do they actually get out of groups? It's probably under 10 or 15%. So if Vegas is telling you that they're not going to get out, and the analysts are telling you they're not going to get out, but the public wants them to get out, then the public outcry if they lose is going to be huge. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. Everybody's saying, like, North America, worst region ever, pathetic, how can you not be better? And I think that there are a lot of problems with North America, but we had two teams go 3-3 and one team go 0-6. I mean, it's some of it comes down to variance. Do I think TSM was by far the worst team in that group? In these games, yes, but if we played more, if we had a larger sample size, do I think that they go winless? No. I just think that's how it kind of played out. Machi, I don't really have much to say about Machi. I didn't really have any opinion about them going into the tournament. Damwon, obviously one of the best teams in the world. But I think especially people who play DraftKings, they had a warped perception of Damwon, because the focus for DraftKings players is number of DraftKings points. It's not necessarily like what causes teams to win games. A lot of the times those two things go hand in hand, but with Damwon, especially now in like the group stage, when the priority becomes winning games, not getting kills, you're going to see a team like Damwon, who was pretty aggressive and flashy for a lot of the season. You're going to see them tone it down a little bit because they don't need to win by 5 or 10,000 gold. They just need to win the game. They don't need to get 20 kills. They just need to win the game. If you get 12 kills and the Nexus, you win the game. And they do a very good job at pressuring the map in that way. So I think we may not even fully understand how good Damwon is yet until they play one of these other top teams, because then we'll see, are they able to exert that kind of pressure onto a top team? And the answer is yes, they can. It's not going to happen as often, because those close games, for the fans, it seems like both teams have a chance to win, even if they don't. Like, for example, today in the Gen.G against G2 game, Gen.G was up 3 dragons and the gold was even. There's no way that Gen.G should have lost that game. So even though they were down like a couple hundred gold, in terms of actual power, they were much stronger, and they just threw away the game, which is very sad. JDG. So JDG was taken out by Suning, and this is something that I was afraid of when I did the Gold Card podcast and like talked to Gelati specifically before all of the stuff going on at Worlds started happening. He asked me, what team are you the most afraid to underperform? And I think I said JDG and Suning, because like I like those teams. So those are obviously the teams that I'm worried about. And the reason is, with JDG, Kanavi is one of the best true carry, because I've used this term differently, I guess, a few times. Kanavi is a carry jungler, and what that means is, in a neutral meta where it's not jungle favored, mid lane favored, AD carry favored, like if it was just a vacuum where like the best jungler that could carry a game, create the winning difference for their team, if that is how we figure out who the best player is, then Kanavi would be the best player, because Kanavi, when like things like Rek'Sai are in the meta, Kanavi can just go top lane, dominate top lane, and then go elsewhere, and it's going to be a huge lead for JDG. And like that's how you can figure out who the carry junglers are before we get into a carry jungle meta. But when we got into the full carry jungle meta, there are a lot of players who are just as good, if not better than Kanavi, at Graves, at Nidalee, at Kindred, at Lilia, at Hecarim. And these matchups are so important. Like, you can be the best player in the world. If you have a bad jungle matchup, it's going to be difficult for you to play the game, because then you'd start to depend on your laners. And I've been skeptical of Yagao and Loken all year. I think they're pretty overrated. They look good because they're winning games, but if you put them in a bad situation, can they turn it around? That's really the sign of a great player, in my opinion. And I think that it's unfair to say that they can't do it, but I was concerned that they wouldn't be able to. And in their match against Suning, I think it was clear that the bot lane for Suning just was, and this is where I would use the phrase outclassed. I think that Suning with Huanfeng and Sword Art, I think they are the better players, and I've been saying that for quite some time. So JDG, yeah, a little upsetting, but like I said, I think I didn't put enough weight on Kanavi's champion pool. That's just a miss from me, I think. So PSG, like I said, don't really care. Rogue. So this is the team that people were saying were better than G2 and Fnatic because they had a better record and were playing better in the summer season. And again, this is where it's class versus form. Rogue was in form, but they're not as good as G2 and Fnatic. They're just not. There's no way to justify that opinion by like talent-wise. These players are not even close to the same level. Maybe you can say that Rogue is somewhat close to Fnatic, but Fnatic, I think that their willingness to fight is something that Rogue has not adopted yet, and they will need to. But what this is going to do is it's going to make some of their games seem less controlled because they're embracing the volatility of fighting, which is necessary to compete at the highest level, in my opinion. But it might negatively impact their ability to play the macro game. So it's a fine line you have to walk, and you don't have to play that style in every single game. So maybe depending on the opponent, they'll be able to out macro lesser teams and then fight the good teams. That's really what you need to be able to do. But Rogue next year, do I expect them to do really well? Honestly, no. I think that I like Hansama and Inspired and Larson, but I'm not focused. Like, they're not a team that I think has long-term staying power without the addition of new players. That's just that. Genji, really bad performance from them today. It was a really bad performance for them today against G2. Losing that game 1 was horrible. Game 2, they got stomped, and game 3, they didn't play around dragons correctly. And it's not that they may have not even really had a chance to play better around dragons because they gave up a couple of early game kills, which gives G2 a ton of pressure around the map. They picked Ezreal. Ezreal's not going to be able to compete with Jhin. So if you have the better bot lane matchup and you can contest these early dragons or exert enough pressure in lane to get a dragon for free, then you're in a great position as G2. And one thing that I hate in League of Legends is when you're on a team that is okay with continuously giving away objectives, continuously giving away dragons, just because in their minds they're thinking to themselves, eventually we're going to be stronger. But if you're both accelerating at the same rate and acquiring gold at the same rate, how are you going to overcome that gold deficit if you're not taking fights, if you're not actually trading dragons for objectives to get more gold? It's just like a trick that people play on themselves. And we've been discussing this a lot with the team, saying like every dragon you get in the early game, if you're losing, is like adding an additional 5 to 6 minutes to the game, and that's really a good way to justify taking that risk, is because in that 6 minutes you'll be able to make more plays, or at least not have to contest a dragon from a weak position. So Genji in that game, Genji won a great fight, did a great job in that fight. take a Baron. Dragon's coming up. They get mid priority. And this is another thing that is really frustrating, is this obsession with mid priority and thinking that mid priority is more important than the objective itself. Dragon is much more important than mid lane priority. Like, you want mid lane priority because it's supposed to help you get the dragon or create additional pressure on the map to make the other team have a tough decision. But when it's Dragon Soul versus your inhibitor, you're going to take Dragon Soul every single time. So why are you trying to force mid lane pressure to have them peel off of Dragon? They're never leaving that Dragon. So that's the one mistake, is just saying like, oh, we'll fight the 4th dragon, we'll fight the 3rd dragon. If one thing goes wrong, now you can't fight in that situation either. So now you've spent all this time saying eventually we'll be able to contest something, then that objective comes up and you can't, because just one thing goes wrong. So assuming that everything is going to go right in the future is another huge mistake. And then I guess the last thing about Gen G and Dragons and G2, which is relevant for every team, is the need to be able to walk into the enemy team and create engages when you're in the worst position around a dragon. So like, can you break the other team if they have like a defensive formation around dragon? If you're the second team to a fight, how do you create that fight? And this is why engaged champions are very important and pick champions are very important, because if you're a team like DRX and you pick a bunch of ranged champions and you don't get to the objective first, you're almost never going to be able to contest that objective. And that's a big oversight by a lot of teams still as well. Next up, Fnatic. Fnatic did a great job against Top Esports. Ton of respect to Fnatic. Again, I've been saying for months, Fnatic is one of the best teams from Europe, and it's important to ask yourself, what does it mean when people ask who is the better region, LPL, LCK, LEC? Because the best teams are not indicative of their entire region. Like, the LPL is the best region because the depth of the talent and the depth of the strong teams in those regions is crazy. Like, you have probably 8 teams from the LPL that can compete in any league around the world. That's fundamentally different than saying like, oh, the LPL is really, or the LEC is really good because they have G2 and Fnatic. Like, that's 2 out of the 10 teams that cannot, 2 of the 10 teams, and they have chances at getting into the top of one of these other leagues, but they're not going to dominate any of these other leagues. If you take G2 and you put them in the LCK, are they the favorites to win the LCK? No, they're not. They can compete with the other teams, and that's really all you can ask for. And that when I have my highest opinion of G2, and I'm arguing for them to be the better team over Mad Lions or Rogue, who are outperforming them at some point in the season, the reason is because I think that if you put G2 in the LCK, they could be competitive and win games and win series and maybe even make a run in the playoffs, but they're not going to be the favorite. Same thing with Fnatic, and I think a lot of that has to do with their ability in best of 3s, best of 5s, having game plans, and doing their research. Like, the volatility of best of 1s is something that the Western regions, we should probably get away from that, because we're not really testing the right things for Worlds. Like, when you go to Worlds, you're essentially playing a best of 2 against everybody in your group, and then a best of 3 or a best of 5 against everybody in the knockout stages. So why are we doing best of 1s? The answer is for money reasons, because the quote-unquote attention span of the people watching is much lower. But I don't think that's really true, because, I mean, maybe it is true. Most of the hardcore fans from the West watch all of these games in the LCK, LPL, but the common fan in the West doesn't have any interest in watching a 3-game series or a 5-game series every single week. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not true. I don't have the statistics. They do. I'm sure that there are other reasons behind this, but it's just like they want to consolidate the games onto certain days. They don't want to play games every single day like the LPL does. And the LPL, I don't think really does that either when they have their options to not, but because of coronavirus, they had to this year. LGD was another big question mark in terms of how they played at the group stage because Peanut really underperformed. Peanut is another player like Kanavi who is always a carry jungler, not just in a carry jungler meta. Peanut had a lot of problems with being safe around objectives, staying healthy before objectives started, was continuously picked off before, not picked off, but like took half of his health bar before a dragon fight and then can't fight the dragon. And that's why it's tough to say to yourself, just wait till the next dragon, give us another 5 or 6 minutes, we'll keep scaling. The other team is also scaling, right? Like that's something that we just seem to forget all the time. Kramer's not a carry, no matter what Atlas tells you. Longxing is not a carry player, no matter what anybody tells you. Mark did okay in the regular season, but didn't do much at Worlds. Shie and Peanut are both good players, but the rest of the team really let them down. And that's really an organizational problem because they should have known that this iteration of LGD was not going to get it done against a lot of the better teams. And then TSM, I'm not going to waste time talking about TSM. Everybody's talked about it a million times, and I'm sure in the offseason they're going to make some roster moves and it'll change things. I expect TSM to be one of the teams that goes like all in on Oceanic players for no reason, and maybe it makes them look good in their region. But next year when we get to Worlds and it's a bunch of North American players and a bunch of Oceania players and maybe a couple players from Europe on like a North American team, it's going to be horrible. They're going to be horrible. I think that this whole Oceanic thing has a chance to bring North America even further down in the spring. And then maybe they realize it's a mistake and they go to something else in the summer. The real thing that they should be doing is expanding the league. But Riot from North America has all these horrible, stupid ideas about how to improve the quality of the game. And I'm not going to give away my ideas for that because I have some things in the works that I want to happen, but probably won't happen. Group D, Top Esports, really, really scary against Fnatic. But they figured it out. When you're thinking about the range of outcomes and you're saying Top Esports wins this 85% of the time, going down 0-2 and then winning 3 games in a row is one of the closest outcomes to them losing that you could get, obviously. And that's included in the range of outcomes. So I don't know why people are so shocked that Fnatic was competitive with Top Esports. I definitely thought that Fnatic had chances to win 1 or 2 games because they have the ability to like pick ban really intelligently and like have interesting game plans. They play the macro very well. They'll play things like Cho'Gath if they have to. So I wasn't that surprised that Fnatic gave them a good match. I was surprised, obviously, that they won the first 2 games because that puts a lot of pressure on Top Esports. But Top Esports rose to the challenge. Really impressive game. It was pretty cool to watch the last 3 games. Once Game 4 was finished, I kind of knew that Top Esports would win Game 5. I think picking Gragas in Game 5 was pretty stupid. And it's really about consistent damage. Like, consistent damage in League of Legends increases your floor. The burst damage in League of Legends increases your ceiling. So a champion like Jhin, yeah, you can make a crazy play by making somebody explode because you're beating them by a lot. But in games where you're even or losing, the Jhin is not going to perform as well. So there are 3 potential scenarios. You're losing, Jhin is horrible. You're even, Jhin is not good. You're winning, Jhin is very good. Would you rather have that, or would you rather have Ashe, where it's like, you're losing, Ashe can create a pick that wins your team the entire game. The game is even. Ashe can kite extremely well and can do more damage than Jhin in a sustained team in an extended team fight. Ashe is winning, even more oppressive than Jhin most of the time because the damage is pretty similar, less bursty, but again, you still have the pick potential, you still have the slows to like dictate how a team fight goes. Yeah, it's just weird. Jhin is going crazy right now, which is hilarious. I think it's definitely incorrect, but I think the meta has gotten to a point where the impact of carry junglers is allowing people to play Jhin for his utility only. And then if he gets kills, people are going to say, oh my god, Jin's so good, he's carrying the game. But the only reason he was in that position is because his teammates created the lead for them. So in the last game, Gen G against G2, Caps made a play rotating bottom, sets up a dive, and they get first blood. I think Perks was the one who got first blood, but the play was created by Caps coming to bot lane. So it's really a team victory. But that's enough of that. DRX, I think DRX was extremely underrated the entire tournament. They didn't play well against Damwon. There are a lot of matchups that they would have looked much better in, and this is one of the things that's kind of this is one of the reasons why I would prefer a double round robin later in Worlds, is because I want to see DRX against all of these other teams. I don't want to see DRX against FlyQuest. I don't care about that matchup. I don't want to see DRX against Unicorns of Love. Who cares? Like, why is that even something I have to watch? I'd rather watch DRX against Fnatic, G2, Suning. Like, I want to see these other matchups because we're getting, like, the second level teams from all these regions competing against one another. That's how we can determine which region is actually better. That would be much more fun to watch, in my opinion. Psg, I think, will only get better. Keria will only get better. In their drafts, a lot of the times, DRX was not putting Keria in a position to carry the match, which is a big mistake. People like to criticize their coach a lot, and I think that is well warranted because he has a lot of these drafts that just kind of miss a lot of the fundamentals of drafting. I'm sure that he has drafts that look very good because his players are so good and better than the other team. But when you're in like an equal, a match where you're of equal ability, you really shouldn't be going for these extremely difficult kiting team compositions because it just takes one or two mistakes and you lose the ability to create fights because they didn't have any engaged 3 games in a row. It's just kind of insane. FlyQuest, love Power of Evil. Power of Evil played really well. Wild Turtle's bad. Unicorns of Love showed us that going 39-2 doesn't really matter at all. Let's keep going. So we had Top Esports against Fnatic, like I said, very close match. Suning against JDG. Awesome match from Suning. Love Suning. Gen G against G2. G2 won today. Very interesting match. Really all I could say about that. Then we had Damwon Gaming beating DRX. I think that was mostly because DRX had some bad drafts. So let's go to the semifinals matchups. Top Esports against Suning. Top Esports is the better team. They are more consistent than Suning, but how do they match up against one another? 369, extremely volatile player in the top lane. Bin, very good carry top laner. I think that Bin definitely has winning chances, so I'd be interested to see what the opening money line is because I think Bin can win games for Suning almost on his own. I think Bin will probably be the focus of Top Esports, and they'll try to get 369 into advantageous matchups like they did against Fnatic. That's going to be a great matchup in the top lane. In the jungle, we have SFM against Karsa. I think that Karsa is good enough on a lot of these carry champions, but SFM I think is better at these champions on this patch. So Graves, Kindred, Lilia, Nidalee, Hecarim. I'd rather be on the SFM side of that matchup. Karsa is good enough though at Graves, so that'll be a contested pick. Lee Sin, and I'm sure that the Nidalee, he played it very well in a Nidalee match. But if Top Esports goes into this game, into this series and says we'll just play Nidalee every single game and lets Suning get the second jungler every time, that'll be a huge advantage for Suning. The jungle dictates so much in this meta, almost everything. The early game is all about the junglers, so you need to have a good jungle matchup. It should really be the focus of almost every draft. It's much more important than the AD carry matchups, which most people like to focus on. Then in the mid lane, we have Angel and Knight. Knight's definitely better. Angel had a bad series against JDG, I think, as well. It was one of the only bright spots for JDG. I think the ability for them to keep it close was because of the mid lane. In the bot lane, Jackie Love and Yu Yanja against Huanfeng and Sword Art. I think that it's much closer than people think. Everybody says, "Oh, Jackie Love, he's the best player in the world." At this point, Jackie Love is one of the best AD carries in the world, but Jackie Love is overrated. There is not that big of a gap between Jackie Love and Huanfeng. Jackie Love is at his best on champions like Senna. Senna is a supportive AD carry, not a carry champion. I think that tells you everything you need to know about Jackie Love. Jackie Love can play these other champions. I'm not saying that he can't, but right now in this meta where junglers are so important, Jackie Love will be at his best on utility AD carries or support AD carries. And Huanfeng is really at his best when there are carry AD carries involved. So if Top Esports continuously picks like Senna and gives up lane priority, I could see Suning winning through the bot lane as well, which I think most people are going to overlook. So I think Suning has real chances to win top lane, real chances to win in the jungle, real chances to win in the bot lane. So I think that this money line should be like 55-45 or 60-40. And it's not going to come out like that. So I'll definitely be on the Suning side. For DraftKings, I will play both sides because it's a two match set. You have to have combinations of both, depending on how the salaries work out and all of that. Then the next match, G2 against Damwon. Again, I think G2 stylistically against Damwon, if Damwon goes the like less flashy route and tries to just out macro G2, that's where you're really asking for problems. I think Damwon is the better team fighting team and will be able to win that way, but it's going to look very bloody, and no matter what happens, people are going to say G2 is like really close to Damwon Gaming after this match is over probably. Do they have chances to win? Yes, they do, but it's going to take a lot of, not disrespect. I don't like talking about it in terms of respect and disrespect, really. But if Damwon doesn't pick ban intelligently, there are going to be a lot of traps. Like, I know Damwon loves Senna, Damwon loves TF, but they need to make sure they're not getting 3 negative lanes plus a bad jungle matchup, because then it's going to be an uphill battle in the mid game. So I think probably ban Silas. Caps is obviously very good at Silas. So probably just want to get rid of that. Nogri against Wonder. Nogri is definitely the better player. That's going to be a very obvious way for them to win. Canyon against Yonkos. Huge advantage to Damwon Gaming. Yonkos is not good at a lot of these carry champions, regardless of how he played in this one, or regardless of what his kill score looks like in these series. His KDA was good, but he was not the player creating the winning difference over Gen G. That was mostly Caps. Caps is really good. Showmaker against Caps. I think that this matchup is probably closer than people think. Showmaker has been talked up so much. Caps has been talked up so much. So where do they really fall? They're probably very similar. I think that Showmaker is better. But it's close enough where it's close enough where the pick ban honestly matters. The drafting really matters. Team composition really matters. Which is a big. This is where we can talk about respect. This is like saying that G2 deserves the respect of being drafted against carefully, because G2 is close enough to make these games pretty close. But like I said, I expect Damwon Gaming to win, and it's either going to be Damwon winning macro games, looking like the better team, or they're winning the bloody fights, and everybody's going to say, oh, G2 lost, but it was 25-15. They got 15 kills. That's pretty good. But it's all relative, so it's really not that good. And then in the bot lane, we have Ghost and Beryl against Perks and Mickey. Ghost and Beryl could be a big problem for Damwon Gaming. Hopefully Beryl plays better than he has so far this tournament. I think that he's been a big question mark so far. But let's just keep going. So going into this, I had Top Esports, JDG, and Damwon as the 3 teams with an actual chance at winning the title. JDG's obviously gone. Then I had Suning, DRX, LGD, Gen.G, G2, and I had Fnatic down here. So obviously just switch out Fnatic and LGD. But now we are here. And this is what it looks like, right? So you would expect Top Esports and Damwon to win these next 2 matches. Suning and G2 right underneath them. That's fine. Let's go to top lane. So this is from before things even started. So for the top laners, we have 3 out of the 4 top laners from the 3 out of 4 of the top laners that are in the semifinals are the S tier top laners. Top lane has been pretty impactful because since you have a carry jungler, if your jungler can go top and get a lead, you can snowball that lead pretty well. So for the Gen.G match, I mean, Wonder was right there. Not very surprising. What do I think about this going into the finals, though? So I think Nogri is better than Wonder. I think Bin is better than Wonder. I think 369 is better than Wonder. I think Bin is probably... He's probably had the best tournament relative to expectations for top laners. Which is cool. But I think Nogri is still the king until he is dethroned. In the jungle. So Kanavi, best jungler at Worlds. I still think that Kanavi is the best jungler in the world, but you can't always carry your team, which is sad but true. We have Canyon, Clit is gone, SFM, Karsa, and Yonkos. So I think Yonkos is still the worst jungler left. I think that Karsa is better, but doesn't play the right... So Yonkos is not as good as these 3 other players and doesn't play the meta champions as well as the other players. Karsa is definitely just as good as SFM and Canyon. Karsa is most likely better than both of those players, SFM and Canyon, but Canyon and SFM both play the true meta champions better. So when you talk about meta, you can either talk about like which champions are popular or which champions should be popular because of their strength relative to their stats, their builds, and how they fit into the overall meta. And I think that Canyon and SFM both play those champions better. Karsa plays Lee Sin very well, plays Graves at a pretty good level, had a very good Nidalee performance, but I don't think that Karsa is at Karsa's best on Graves, on Nidalee, which is what's concerning in these matchups. Do I think that the rest of Karsa's team can overcome that deficit? Yes, definitely. But it will require that. In the mid lane, we have Knight, Showmaker, Chovy is gone, BDD is gone, Yagao is gone. I shouldn't have had Yagao here, I think. I just kind of gave in to everybody else. BDD didn't have a very good performance in terms of flashiness, but that's really not BDD's playstyle normally. In these high pressure matchups, I'm not that surprised that we saw the BDD that we typically see against T1. I'm not surprised that happened at Worlds. Caps, I think it should probably be like this, right? Something like this, where Yagao is actually down here. Caps, BDD, Chovy are all similar, I guess. And then Knight and Showmaker at the top. This will be interesting to see how this plays out. We'll see. I think the Angel's definitely the worst mid laner left. In terms of the 80 carries, we have Ruler, who even against G2 in 3 losses looked pretty good. Huanfeng, Jackie Love, then we have Ghost, and we have Perks. I think that Perks has probably had a better tournament than Ghost relative to my expectations, but relative to everyone else's expectations, I still don't think Perks is playing at the level that makes you watch Gen G against G2 and think to yourself, oh wow, Perks beat Ruler. Because that's not really what happened. G2 beat Gen G. And I think that it mostly had to do with Caps and the team getting big leads by attacking the strength of Gen G, but it wasn't like mechanical outplay. It was good strategic decision making, which is probably it's more important. It's more indicative of a team that has chances to win a series against a very good team. Like, people want the mechanics to be the more important part, but it's so much more important to like be aggressive, make the right play calls, and then attack the other team, which is what G2 did very well in this matchup. So I think Quanfeng and Jackie Love are both better than Ghost and Perks. I think that Perks is probably better than Ghost. So that's interesting. And then last up, Keria and Lumao are both gone. Sword Art, Beryl, Mickey, and Yu Yanja. So I think I do think that Sword Art is the best support left, which is important in this meta where a champion like Bard can be so game breaking. Beryl on Pantheon is very good, but Beryl on a lot of other champions honestly doesn't look very good. Mickey plays Rakan and has a very deep champion pool, so they always have the ability to play whatever is good within a series, not like what is my best champion. Like, it's more difficult to ban out Mickey than Beryl, or it's more difficult to ban out Mickey than Yu Yanja. You're not going to ban out Sword Art. Sword Art has champions that they're obviously extremely good at, and then other champions where they're not as good. But I trust Sword Art to make really good shot calls and keep Suning in a position where they can actually contest objectives, which also comes down to the drafts. But I guess let's do this. I guess that would be the order. When it comes to talent and then taking champion pool and everything into consideration, this is probably my order for supports. I think that's my order for 80 carries. For mid lane, that seems about right. That seems right to me as well. And like I said, it's not just talent. It's also like their champion pools. That seems right to me as well. This might be flipped, 369 and Bin, but I have faith in Bin. And I know that this makes it look like I think that Suning doesn't have an advantage in the top lane, but has winning chances. I think they do have an advantage in the jungle in terms of champion pool. But this is the biggest difference. I think that Knight is much better than Angel. And then Huanfeng and Jackie Love, I think stylistically they match up well with one another. Both very good players. And then Sword Art, I think, is better than Yu Yanja. So that was a longer video than I intended, but I feel like we had a lot of good information in there. So I hope you enjoyed it. That's all I've got for you today. And I'll talk to you, maybe not tomorrow, but I will talk to you again sometime. When the next games happen. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.